the legendary ZR-1 Corvette versus the 1996 LT4. Which of these affordable, high-performance Corvettes is the fastest to drive and the best to own? For the first time ever, these special C4s will be tested back-to-back in a series of real-world tests, including acceleration, performance driving, curb appeal, value, and reliability. Is the ZR-1 the true king of the hill, or is the LT4 an underrated champ? Welcome to Retro Cars Forever. My name is Brad, and you all know how much I love my 1996 LT4 powered collector edition Corvette. But for the same price, I could own a higher mileage, earlier example of the famous ZR-1 like this one. I've actually never driven a ZR-1 before, so when my buddy Jag got this 1991 steel blue example, I knew I had to do this comparison test to see which top dog was the true real-world champ of factory-assembled 4th-gen Corvettes. So let's meet today's fighters, starting with the ZR-1. The ZR-1's V8 engine, dubbed the LT5, is a complex one-of-a-kind design with 4 camshafts, 32 valves, 16 fuel injectors, and 16 intake runners. This Lotus-designed wonder is essentially 2 engines in one. For better control at low speeds, only half the intake runners and fuel injectors are operating. But above 3,500 RPM, the rest of the engine wakes up, spinning the LT5 to a lofty 7,200 RPM redline. To help put that extra power to the ground, Chevy expanded the ZR-1's rear tires to nearly 1.5 feet wide each. That meant the ZR-1 needed unique rear bodywork to span 3 inches wider than other C4s. All that engineering came at a price, as you can see in this ZR-1's window sticker. At the time, a base Corvette went for about 32 grand. But add the ZR-1 option, and you nearly doubled the cost of the car. For the early 90s, this price tag was truly eye-opening. The LT4 engine, by comparison, was cheap and simple. Dubbed the Grand Sport motor, this redhead was only available in 1996 if you ordered a Corvette with a manual transmission. The LT4 is basically a higher revving hot rod version of the common LT1 pushrod V8 that could be found in base Corvettes. The LT4's advertised rating was 330 horsepower, 30 more than the common LT1. And you can see from my car's window sticker that this option was a great deal, only costing an extra $14.50. For the time, this was a lot of bang for the buck. Now, here's how the LT4 engine specs stack up with an early stock ZR-1. On paper, it looks like the ZR-1 has a clear performance advantage, but we have to add a question mark to the rating of the LT4, as it's generally accepted that Chevrolet underrated it. Many LT4s have been dynoed over the years, most famously by Atlanta's Auto Performance Test Lab, where they found the average LT4 was actually putting out closer to 350 to 360 horsepower. Also, the ZR-1 weighs about 170 pounds more than the LT4, so that further closes the performance gap. As for our specific cars in today's shootout, my LT4 is about as mint and stock as they come, with less than 40,000 miles on the odometer. Jag's ZR-1 is 5 years older and has more miles under its belt, 67,000 in total. This ZR-1 is a bit rough around the edges, as his car used to see occasional track duty, which explains the aftermarket roll bar in the back. Also, this car has some light aftermarket performance mods that are very common for ZR-1s these days. That includes a Corsa catback exhaust system and a performance chip from Hybeck Automotive Technology that together are good for an extra 20 or so horsepower. In any case, both of our cars have virtually the same 6-speed manual transmission, the same 345:1 rear axle ratio, similarly grippy summer performance tires, and comparably stiff suspensions. So, those are your fighters. Now, let's head to the canyons and let the contest commence. The first test is performance driving on a canyon road. I'll give you my seat-of-the-pants reaction to how the ZR-1 compares to my LT4. Okay, 91 ZR-1, and the first thing you notice is that the interior looks like just any other 1991 Corvette, except for one little funny thing right here, the valet key. If you want to have a valet or maybe a teenager that you don't quite trust them with the full 375 horsepower, you plug this guy in and you flick it over to normal, and that stops the secondary injectors and the secondary intakes from working. However, we are going to want full power mode, baby. All right, let's do this. Woo! Let's go. Man, this is such a dream car for me. The very first car magazine that I remember consciously getting was a 1993 August Motor Trend edition, which was called Top Gun, and it was all the cool top sports cars at the time, and the ZR-1 was on the cover, and that cemented my fascination with amazing cars such as this, and it's such a treat to finally be able to drive one. Whoa! Oh, effortless speed. Can you heel and toe downshift? Yes, you can. So heel and toe downshifting, if you're not aware, is where you got to use all three pedals at the exact same time. And you can do it on a ZR-1. You can't do it on the normal stock C4 like mine. I had to install this big, ugly 3D printed custom block to be able to do it. But on the ZR-1, you can do it right from the factory. Oh. This is addictive. Now, I don't notice when the engine switches over when the secondaries open and the car really delivers all of its power. It's not like VTEC, where you notice when the engine comes on power. It's just there's always power. Look how flat it is around the corners. No body roll. If anything, the heft gives it an extra sense of weightiness. Kind of like a BMW. It kind of has that nice settled feel. My car feels a little bit nervous. You can probably hear it has more squeaks and rattles. That is something that all earlier Corvettes are going to suffer from compared to my 96. They did a lot of work to get rid of the squeaks and rattles in later cars like mine. And the sound is, now granted this car has a much more aggressive exhaust than what my car has, but the sound from the engine, it sounds like an exotic. My car sounds like a normal small block Chevy V8. This thing sounds like a world-class engine, which it is. One more. Between the two cars, both are really, really fun cars. This car is a little bit more fun. It's a little bit more stable. I can heel and toe downshift right from the factory. And that engine, I feel like it has that extra, like maybe 10% more power than the LT4. I don't know. We'll find out when we do our acceleration runs, won't we? What a car. What a machine. Woo! Wow. They say never meet your heroes, but this is a hero of mine, and it delivered. Great car. So the first contest victory goes to the ZR-1. Both cars are joys to drive on a twisty road, but the ZR-1 is truly the stuff that childhood dreams are made of. Now we'll find out which car accelerates the fastest from 0 to 60 miles per hour in the real world. Now there's a big difference between how a car accelerates on the street compared to the performance numbers achieved on a grippy racetrack, especially when piloted by a test driver who couldn't care less about harming the mechanicals of someone else's car. Even still, I wanted a baseline, so I sorted through the track numbers achieved by my favorite car magazines of the era. Averaging them all out, early ZR-1s had 0 to 60 runs of 4.7 seconds, and the LT4s were about half a second behind, averaging 5.2 seconds. But there's never been a back-to-back comparison between a ZR-1 and an LT4 on the same day and location until now. For this test, we'll be using this funky, forgotten country side road I discovered that literally leads to nowhere. There's only enough space to safely run each car one at a time, with me behind the wheel and Jag at the timer. After several practice runs, we'll take the best of 2 timed attempts. Now, I don't expect our times to be nearly as fast as what the magazines of the day achieved. We're up at 4,000 feet in altitude where the oxygen is a bit thin, and the temps are in the high 80s. But it will give us a direct comparison between these two machines to answer the question, can a potentially underrated LT4 accelerate just as fast as a ZR-1? Let's start with the LT4 and find out. 0 to 60 in my LT4. Traction control is off, AC is off. I'm gonna rev it to 2,000 and then go as fast as I possibly can. Shifting at red line. Okay, Jag, are you ready with your timer?
Ready.
And 2,000, say when to go.
Hit it.
Oh, no. And 60. 6.86. I didn't get a good launch that time. I feel like a kiss a wheel spin is what you want. Let's try that again, shall we? One more attempt in the LT4. Ready?
Hit it.
Oh yeah, baby, there we go. Okay, and now. What do we do?
6.78.
All right, 6.78. We're gonna call that how fast can an LT4 go on just a normal road with just
a couple of dudes
in the middle of nowhere. Let's see if the ZR-1 can beat that time. Okay, we are now in the ZR-1, and as much as I want to believe that my car is supremely underrated and can spank this car, I do want to make sure that I drive the ZR-1 as good as I can, because it is a ZR-1.
Ready?
Okay, here we go. 2,000 RPM, and I am ready.
Hit it.
Oh, come on, hook up and go. Oh, now. What was that?
6.71.
That is so close. That's a little bit faster than our fastest LT4 time, right? Which was what, 6.78?
Very close.
Okay, I think I can squeeze a little bit more out of the ZR-1.
Now, what about the feel test though, Brad? How did it feel when you were pulling both cars?
I mean, this feels faster. It hooks up better, first of all. I think the rear tires that are wider definitely help with that.
Yeah.
You know, obviously it's louder. Yeah. Any car that's louder makes you feel like you're going way faster. All right, final attempt in the ZR-1. Ready, ready.
Hit it.
Oh, go baby, go. Woo, and up. Where we at?
6.46.
Nice. Okay, that is our official best 2 dudes in the middle of nowhere in an abandoned road time for the Corvette ZR-1. So, as it turns out, our best 0 to 60 times for each car are pretty close to the half-second difference that the magazines tested, and the ZR-1 wins by a scant margin. But in my opinion, the LT4's skinnier tires and supposedly huge power deficit should have given the ZR-1 a knockout punch, not this narrow victory. This leads me to believe that, indeed, the LT4 engine was underrated from the factory. Instead of the advertised 330 horsepower, 350 or so does seem more realistic. In any case, we couldn't just leave a beautiful abandoned road like this without a few burnouts just for fun. So what's reliability and maintenance costs like with these two machines? I've talked with dozens of ZR-1 and LT4 owners to give you this honest assessment. For their age, both cars are generally reliable, but what separates the two is the complexity of their engines. The LT4 is a pretty basic, good old pushrod Chevy small block. Its only tricky piece is the infamous OptiSpark distributor, which thankfully by 1996 had a much improved vented design, but it's still a weak point. Beyond that, the LT4 LT4 is much simpler than the LT5. The LT5 has twice as many fuel injectors, twice as many valves, 4 times as many camshafts, and has nearly 3 times as much oil capacity for 12 quarts in total. Oil changes with the ZR-1 are not cheap. And unfortunately, a lot of vital components are hidden away underneath the intake plenum, such as the starter, several vacuum lines, and ignition coils. But I don't want to give the impression that ZR-1s are pains to work on or impossible to find parts for. Both cars have stellar aftermarket support, but the ZR-1 community is especially tight-knit and helpful, with entire websites dedicated to keeping these cars running and to help source parts. Just be aware that when finding ZR-1 parts, you won't have the luxury of choice that you get with the simpler LT4, which shares most of its components with the very common LT1. Also, pinpointing problems with the code reader is much easier in the LT4, as it was equipped with the advanced and easy-to-read OBD2 computer diagnostic system, which wasn't available on any ZR-1. So overall, while the ZR-1 is easy to own by 90s supercar standards, it will cost you more in maintenance over time, so the LT4 wins this victory. Next up, a test of curb appeal. When parked next to each other, which of these two cars attracts the most attention? Look, I realize that ultimately, you should own a car that makes you happy. But I also know how many Corvette owners love to take their cars to shows and meetups, so I wanted to include this social experiment. Over the past year, my Corvette and I have gone to 4 Los Angeles car events with Jag and his ZR-1. I figured these two Corvettes would get roughly equal attention, as LT4s and LT5s are equally rare. They're also nearly identical styling-wise, and early ZR-1s like this one have only one tiny emblem on the back to identify it. But it was clear with every gathering, the ZR-1 was the showstopper, and when the engine bays were open, it was no contest. While people dig the snazzy red LT4, only die-hard Corvette guys have ever heard of it. But every car enthusiast knows about the ZR-1, and can appreciate the advanced engineering that went into the LT5 engine. In the end, the street cred of the ZR-1 and that magnificent-looking engine gives it the clear edge in winning over a crowd. Okay, so weekend drives and car shows are one thing, but let's say you want to use your Corvette every day like I do. Which car is going to be the easiest to daily? Parking lot door dings are going to be a greater concern with the ZR-1. The doors on the ZR-1 are actually unique as they flare outwards to meet the wider rear fenders. And that means the parking spots will not only feel more narrow, but you'll also have a much harder time finding replacement panels if you need them. If safety is on your mind, there are several improvements that an LT4 has over an early ZR-1, such as an additional passenger side airbag and traction control. Also, if you're a bigger boy or girl, the early Corvette seats like the ZR-1 has are tight and confining. You'll have a much easier time fitting into the more relaxed chair designs of later years. And the LT4, like all later C4s, is much more refined overall. Not only do later cars have less squeaks and rattles, they'll also have the genuinely useful passkey remote entry system. So all of these advantages give the LT4 a clear advantage for daily use over an early ZR-1. And now our final comparison, purchase price. How much are these Corvettes worth today? Pretty close, if you get what I consider to be the bargains of each version, like what we have here in this test. Let's start with the ZR-1. As you can see in my old copy of Car and Driver, they sold way more examples in the early years than they did in the later ones. This was despite a bump up in power in 1993 from 375 horsepower to 405. So those later cars are more powerful, rarer, more refined, and more valuable these days. Well-sorted examples of later ZR-1s go for between 30 and 55 grand, but earlier ZR-1s like this one can be had for much less, around 20 to 35 grand. It's a similar story with the 96 LT4. There's versions you can get for a great deal and others that are pricey collectibles. 1,000 of the LT4 sold were part of the striped Grand Sport Special Edition package, and Grand Sports go for a pretty penny nowadays, around 30 to 50 grand each. But remember, any 96 Corvette with a manual was blessed with the LT4 engine, including base coupes, convertibles, and even the silver collector editions like my car. They're mechanically identical to the Grand Sport, but they go for a lot less, more like the $17,000 to $26,000 range. The two specific Corvettes I've gathered here today are about equal in value, somewhere in the mid-20s as they sit, but the ZR-1 would be worth around 5 grand more than mine if it was in equivalent like-new condition with equivalent miles. So all things being equal, an LT4 is cheaper to purchase than a ZR-1, even an early one, so the LT4 gets this win. But the modern-day cost comparison is closer than most people think. Alright, it's time to tally up all of our contest results and declare a winner. The ZR-1 wins in performance driving, acceleration, and curb appeal for 3 points total. The LT4 counters with victories in maintenance, daily use, and purchase price, which means it also has 3 points total. So I guess we have a draw. But I refuse to be wishy-washy and tell you that both cars are equally good. They just excel in different areas that you'll notice more depending on how you use them. So here is the ultimate verdict. The LT4 is the best daily, and the ZR-1 is the best weekend car. But now I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Which C4 do you think is best and why? And are there any other retro car matchups you'd like to see in the future? Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon so you don't miss more Retro Cars Forever coming to you soon. Thanks for watching, and remember, if you have a fun car, get out there and go for a drive.